King, shalom. First and foremost, want to give honor and praise unto Yah, the creator of heaven and earth. This is Yeshaya Yisrael. The Torah is not for maat, part 3. We are going to go in Exodus 32. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron, and said unto him, Up, make us gods which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graven tool, after he had made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Yisrael, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. And they rose up early on the morrow, and offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink, and rose up to play. And Yah said unto Moshe, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, These be thy gods, O Yisrael, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And the point of me reading this is because you have some who sit there and state what the Israelites was doing in the land of the Sinai and worshiping what we read here as the golden calf is a part of Egyptian culture becoming part of the Hebrew culture. But brothers and sisters, that's actually not accurate. Now, a lot of times people say that this is speaking about the Egyptian goddess Hathor. I have a book here entitled The Gods and Symbols of Ancient Egypt. And on page 58, under the Hathor situation, it says this. Hathor, the name of this goddess, means house of Horus. Her sign corresponds to this, since it depicts a falcon and a house. In earlier times, the sky goddess was regarded as the mother of the sun god until Isis replaced her. The concept of the sky as a cow, which was widespread in the Delta, causes Hathor to be given bovine form. An 18th dynasty sculpture from Deir el-Bahari, now in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, shows Hathor as a cow protecting the king. Usually, the goddess was shown in a human form, wearing on her head the sun disk, flanked by a cow and horns. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is that right there in the Hebrew culture would have been deemed as idolatry, would have been deemed as worshiping a statue. It would have been deemed as incorrect behavior. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out by reading that too is that it says that was done in later times in Egypt in what we call the Delta. This here is a map of Egypt showing what they refer to as Lower Egypt, the Delta. All right. This here being what they call the Great Bitter Lakes. When the children of Israel left, brothers and sisters, out of the land of Egypt, they went in that route and crossed over. So let that be understood. Now, there is no Egyptian record stating that the Hebrews were not in Egypt. And they would have had opportune time to leave a record during the era when Manetho was doing what he was doing. One of the things, brothers and sisters, to sit there and point out is that many times people who sit there and state that the Hebrew culture is borrowed from the Egyptian culture emphatically are incorrect and do not know of what they're speaking of. because they, no offense intended, obviously do not know what the Hebrew culture is. So let's go and understand what this is from the Hebrew record itself. Let's go back to Exodus chapter 20. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 23. And it says, "You shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall you make unto you gods of gold." So we are not supposed to make gods for ourselves. So the God of Israel is not to be put inside of any museum. And that's the point that I wanted to show with that. All right, so let that be known and understood. If we will, showing more so that the culture is different. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 1. "And Yah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am Yah your God. After the doings of the land of Egypt wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, where I bring you, shall ye not do. Neither shall ye walk in their ordinances." So we are not supposed to walk as Israelites into the statutes and into the ways of the children of the Egyptians, nor into the statutes or the ways of the children of the Canaanites. The Israelite culture was to be separated from that of every other people. Now, if we will, let it be known and understood that the God of the Hebrews is not to be worshipped like the Neferu of Egypt, such as some of them being like Sobek or Heket or Atum or Amun or Anubis or Hathor or so forth and so on. Israelite culture didn't have a thing that they called maat. The Israelite culture is the Torah, because when you go in Deuteronomy, it says this is your chakma, your wisdom, and your bina, your understanding, in the sight of the peoples, that when they see the children of Israel practicing the ways of the Torah and doing their own Hebrew culture, they say this is a wise and an understanding people. For what people is there so great that have laws like the laws of the Torah? That is what Deuteronomy says. Later on in the presentation, we're going to go into an external reference to show how other scholars and historians stated that the culture of the Egyptians and the culture of the Hebrews are two different things. Note, there is no Egyptian papyrus stating that they taught the Hebrews. The understanding coming out of the New Testament in Acts chapter 7, where it says that Moses was learned in all the ways of the Egyptians, that is just as wise to try to use that quote to sit there and state that I was raised inside the ways of the Americans, and so therefore I'm now an American, but knowing good and well I'm not an American, just like Moses knew that he was not an Egyptian. And so now, with that being said, let's go into the book of Exodus 32 verse 19. "And it came to pass as soon as he come nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands, and broke them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which he had made, and burnt it in the fire, and ground it to powder, and strawed it up upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it." So it just goes to show that if the Israelites was worshiping and paying homage to the Egyptian goddess Hathor in Exodus 32, we see what the prophet of the Hebrews, that is to say in this case Moses, thought about Hathor, the god of the Egyptians, or the goddess of the Egyptians. You understand? And he took it, broke it, and burnt it, and then he had the children of Israel drink of it. So therefore, what will happen is, biologically wise, you would either urine it out, defecate it out, vomit it out, or it may unfortunately come out through any orifice or any hole of your body, because your body naturally rejects whatever's not natural to it. And burnt gold is not natural to the body. So it causes you to get sick. And if not sick, you will sit there and have a severe situation when you have to do, as the saying goes, a number two. You understand? So that's to say to defecate. All right, now, so that just goes to show what Moses thought about the Egyptian goddess Hathor. So somebody trying to sit there and state that he was taught in the ways of the Egyptians, thus meaning that he was support of it, not so. All right? We already went over in part 1 and in part 2. Namely, part 2, what he said in Deuteronomy 29:16 and 17. Their idols and abominations are gods of wood, stone, silver, and gold. Now, let's go, brothers and sisters. If you read the pyramid text of Egypt, there's a pyramid text 1248 and 1249. And in that pyramid text, brothers and sisters, it emphatically states that the Egyptian god Atum, in one of their stories of how they say the world was created, he looked in the shadow of himself, grabbed upon his penis, masturbated his semen or his sperm into his hand, and then from that put his sperm in his mouth and then spit it back out. And that's one of the creation stories that they have in ancient Egypt. They have different creation stories. Depends upon what major city of Egypt you're talking about. One of them being where Ptah, when they said that he spoke the world into existence. Then you got the one from the pyramid text that we spoke about. Then you got the one from Elephantine with Khnum. Then you got the one with Amun, which is in the Delta in northern Egypt. So you got different understandings even within that one civilization and culture about how they said the world was created. Whereas once it comes to the Hebrews' way of how they said the world was created, the Most High created the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, which also includes the creation of people, and rested, that is to say, ceased from his work on the seventh day. Many people attempt to state that maat is the way in which the Hebrews got the Ten Commandments. Cannot ever show where is a Sabbath in the maat culture. Leviticus chapter 19 speaks about Israel is to keep the Sabbath being holy because the Most High, their God of the Hebrews, is holy. But in Ma'at, there is no Sabbath. So the praised scholar and historian Dr. Ben, in his book, Black Theology, in which he had to admit and state that only 8 out of 10 of the 10 commandments can even attempt to be placed as far as being plagiarized. But brothers and sisters, you cannot plagiarize not stealing. You cannot plagiarize not sleeping with another man's wife. You cannot plagiarize not murdering. So therefore, it's kind of frivolous to try to look at a principle or a culture that says murdering is wrong and say, oh, they got that concept from somebody else. Knowing good and well the Egyptians never stated that they taught the Hebrews. So let that be known and understood. And for anybody attempting to state, well, you had it to where Moses supposedly murdered a man and then had to run. What happened, if you know the story properly, is that that man who was put to death by the hands of Moses in the book of Exodus, he was beating on his brother, another Hebrew. So Moses was looking out for his brother and taking out the oppressor. Those are things that we talk about doing. We always talk about as black people getting rid of the pigs and so forth and so on. But then people seem to lose understanding and concept what happened inside of the situation with Moshe or Moses. So what happened later on is when he saw 2 of his own brothers fighting the next day, one of them said to the other, who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Will you kill me like you killed an Egyptian? So what that Negro, in that case, no offense intended, was saying is, you killed the boss man. You gonna kill me because I's just a nigga. I ain't worth more than this massa here. That's exactly the kind of mentality that Moses was running into with the Israelites that was in Egypt. So we can see why the Israelites had to go through the 40 years in the wilderness to shed away the culture of the Egyptians from themselves. Because the cultures are different. The laws are different. The principles of Egypt and the culture of the Hebrews are different. Shalom with part 3.